Hey everybody, I wanted to do a little short video on how to care for a self bow, do's and don'ts. Uh, some of you guys may already know some of this stuff, but it's good to know if you're new into self bows or whatever. You got to care for them a little differently than modern bows. Um, so for starters, when you're shooting a self bow, you should really never let anyone else shoot it. And the reason for that is wood has a memory, and the wood gets used to how you shoot. So if you draw back slow and then hold and then shoot, the wood's used to that. If you hand it to a friend, even if he has the same draw length or shorter than you, and that bow's been broken in the way you shoot, and say your friend yanks back fast or does something different, you know, it can shock the wood and the bow could break just because it's not used to shooting like that. So the other thing is on a wood bow is if you hand it to a buddy who has a longer draw length than you, so say your bow pulls 50 pounds at 28 inches and your buddy has a 28 and a half or 29-inch draw, when he draws that bow back, he's going to be pulling it to a higher poundage than 50 pounds because he has the longer draw length. And what that's going to do is it's going to compress the fibers on the belly of the bow. It's also going to stretch the fibers on the back of the bow further because he's drawn it further. But it's going to stress the fibers on the belly of the bow. And so even if the bow doesn't break, when he hands it back to you for you to shoot, the bow is going to have taken on the string follow of a heavier bow, and or those wood fibers have been crushed further, and the bow will never shoot as good for you after that. It's not going to have as much cast or as much spring to it. So that's why you should never let anybody else shoot your bow. Now, Grant, sometimes you might acquire a wood bow from someone else, and if that's the case, you should almost treat it as a brand new unfinished bow. This bow was built in the 40s, and the guy I got it from, it was so heavy he couldn't draw it, so he had it hanging on his wall for years and years and years, and then finally one day he gave it to me. And he said, here, you can hang this on your wall. Well, I didn't want to hang it on the wall. I wanted to shoot it. So I actually ended up taking some wood off the belly to tiller it down to a weight that I could shoot. But what I did, because the bow had sat for so long, was I actually put it on a tillering tree with a long tillering rope. Started flexing it a little bit at a time to make sure the tiller was good, and then removed the wood and acted like I was tillering out a brand new bow, and then slowly working it back to my draw length, basically teaching the wood to bend again, exercising it a lot. Bows are like old people. You gotta, or athletes or anybody where you got to warm them up and stretch them before you do a bunch of work. So the other thing is, when you get your bow out in the morning and you're going to go out shooting, don't just string it up and yank it back all the way back. String it up and sit there and flex it a little bit. Warm it up, flex it at quarter half draw and warm it up before you shoot it. Now, certain woods are very temperature sensitive. Yew wood is one of those woods that it gets kind of brittle in really cold weather. In the old books from the 1920s and 40s and stuff, when a lot of guys were hunting with yew bows, they would talk about warming up their bows in the morning on really cold mornings, and they weren't talking about just flexing them. They would actually take their hands and rub them and get some heat into them before they strung them and flexed them and stuff. A wood bow, when you're done shooting it, you should always unstring it and you don't have to unstring it between every target or every shot or anything like that, but when you're done for the day, you don't want to just hang it up strung or put it in your car strung. You want to unstring it when you're done. And when you unstring a wood bow, because the wood will slowly relax after being strung. So these limbs over time could slowly relax and go straighter. Whereas a glass, modern bow, as soon as you unstring it, it springs right back to this position, the shape that it was in when it was unstrung to begin with. But a wood bow has to relax. So when you unstring your bow and you hang, it should always be hung up on a peg, like this from the string, or it could be on pegs like this, resting on the belly, or you can set it. If you're going to set it down on the belly like that. So that allows the thing to relax. If you unstring your bow, you should never unstring it and lean it up against a corner like that, because what happens is now that limb's touching the ground, that limb can't slowly relax, and you can put a permanent bend in your limbs of your bow if you unstring it and lean it in a corner. Even modern bows, like modern recurves, a lot of them you see are ruined because people put them in a closet or something like that for years, and you'll see the recurve tips sometimes are twisted, and that's because of improper storage a lot of times. So when I'm hunting in wet weather with a self bow, and here in Washington it rains quite a bit. I usually have a KC gunstock true oil is what I use for finish on my bow, but some people use urethane, lots of different types of finishes you can put on. But if it's really rainy weather, I usually put on another coat of like a Johnson's paste wax on my bow, just when I'm out hunting. And then if you're out hunting in the rain with the bow all day, when you get back to your campsite or get back home or wherever, you want to take a towel, dry it off, put it in a dry place and let it dry off. Storing wood bows, you don't want to store them in anywhere where there's a lot of direct heat. Like you don't want to store a wood bow next to a wood fireplace, because a wood fireplace is going to really suck a lot of moisture out of your bow, and it can become too brittle. No matter what kind of finish you put on a wood bow, eventually the wood is going to acclimatize to the prevailing humidity at wherever you live or wherever the bow is stored. So whatever the humidity is in your house, if that's where you store your bow, it's eventually going to acclimatize to that humidity. If you take a bow, like if I'm here in Washington where we have pretty high humidity, and I took a bow to Arizona desert where it's lower humidity, that bow's eventually going to acclimatize to that climate, and it could dry it out and make it more brittle. So you got to be mindful of that if you're traveling with a wood bow. I like true oil for a finish mainly because I can reapply the finish at any time. If the finish gets dinged up, you just take your true oil, maybe rough up the original finish with some 4/0 steel wool, and then apply a new coat of true oil over the top of it. And you can apply as many coats as you want. When I'm finishing a bow, I usually do about 5 to 7 coats, but you can reapply it at any time, and it's not going to affect the old finish. So that's one reason I like it. And then usually I steel wool between the last couple finishes to give it a nice finish. You can also steel a wool it a little bit to dull it up if you're going to go hunting. You don't want the bow too shiny. It takes about overnight or a couple, 24 hours for it to dry completely. When you don't want to put on too thick, you want to do lots of thin coats. I usually put on a nitro glove and just put the true oil on my hand and then just work it into the wood, rub it into the bow. I think that pretty much covers everything. That's all I can think of. So if anybody has any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to answer them as best I can. Thanks for watching.